Bonjour, campers. I have spent 2 weeks deep in the bowels of Camp Wanasleya, and I believe I am closer than ever to finding an answer to this madness. I will share everything I have learned. Gather in the movie room tonight. Together, we can triumph over evil. Who's there? Sacre bleu! I have seen a mysterious masked man. He's dressed in leather and carrying a knife. Deputy Camp Director Anne, get everyone in their bunks at once! There's a murderer on the loose! He's already killed, and he's looking for his next victim. I can feel it. Him inside me. Oh dear, stay safe and rest en vie!
Bonjour. Welcome to Bunk 237, the fake camp that we made up that I guess is now in France today, to talk about horror movies. I am one of your hosts, Robin Zlotnick.
And I'm the other host, Tuyet Wen. Our guest today is our very first returning camper, Keith Garcia, artistic director of the City Film Center in Denver and the director of the forthcoming dragumentary, The Heels Have Eyes. Hello, Keith.
Hello! I'm so honored to have returned to camp for another
You made it.
season.
You survived the first season.
Yeah,
I did. Does that make me Tommy Jarvis? Is that?
And you're back.
We do have a frequent camper badge for you.
Yes!
I know what you did last summer. You were here with us.
I'll put that on the fridge.
Oh, it's not real.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah, if you were still waiting for the badges from the other episode, those don't exist. Nothing exists here.
Nothing exists here.
This camp
Except us.
This camp is a malleable, just goop of a galaxy that floats around. Hence, I suppose, why we're in France today.
Exactly. We are in France today because we watched 2018's Knife Plus Heart, Knife and Heart. In French, it's called Un couteau dans le cœur, a knife in the heart. It is a French film, co-written and directed by Yann Gonzalez. Takes place in 1979 in Paris. It's neon lights everywhere. Everyone's wearing leather. Vanessa Paradis plays Anne, a producer of gay porn, and she's going through a rough time. She's an alcoholic. She's heartbroken over a recent breakup with her ex-girlfriend, who is also her editor. Talk about awkward working with your ex, right? And then on top of all that, a masked killer starts murdering her actors one by one.
Can I make a comment about horror movies that I just realized about all the lead actors? They're always going through a rough time.
Yeah, you never have a protagonist in a horror movie that is well adjusted.
Right.
In therapy for good reasons, not because they're getting over something, or on their meds.
Right. I
Wait,
mean,
Is this why we like horror movies? Or we?
it kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
It's a cathartic,
What
journey to the trenches
Yeah, what does
of
that
human existence.
say about us? What does that say about us? Are you guys okay? Am I okay?
Look, Tuyet, no one's okay right now.
Okay. No, you're right. It is. We can't ask that question anymore until 2024.
Right.
But let's talk about Anne. Is she okay? She's not. She's not
okay.
She's not
She's definitely not okay.
And Annie, are you okay?
Ça va? No.
I will say for my 2 years of taking French in middle school, the one thing that I remembered was when they go, ça va? And I'm like, oh, I remember that.
Ça va bien? Oui. I took French through high school. So, and I've been practicing a little bit on Duolingo. So.
Oh, I love Duolingo's album. It was the best album of 2020.
Really popular. A lot of downloads, I think, in 2020.
Yes.
Okay, but back to Knife Plus Heart. Keith, this was your choice, and you brought this movie to us, just like you did Black Christmas the first time you were on the podcast, and you're 2 for 2, and
Bam.
nailed it. And I just want to know what your background is with this movie, how you came to it, what you love about it.
Well, something about me that not everybody knows, but they should, is that I am gay as fuck. And so
Keith.
I know.
Just
Sorry
kidding.
to
I
tell
know.
you this way.
What?
But all those nights, Tuyet,
Oh
with
my God.
you. That's neither here nor there. So my whole life growing up, not only did I love horror and slashers and all this stuff, but I was always like looking for like the queer coding that exists in actually quite a bit of horror over the years. Me just looking for like, well, where's the if the goal of watching a movie is to put yourself in the shoes of the protagonist or any character really on screen, being queer is the other part that's like, ooh, well, who amongst this group of potential victims and or final girl am I siding with? Am I feeling closer to? And is there a potential for there to be a queer connection? Is this character going through a rough time, but in regards to their identity or sexuality, which I'm sure horror fans have figured out it's been about the last 5 years that Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, is perhaps the most quintessentially rediscovered queer-coded horror entry
Right.
of all horror films, and that it is indeed was written with a subtext, although from an angle of homosexuality is bad, that you have to suppress the monster within you, versus being a like, yay, like a, I mean, I was about to say a positive queer-coded movie like The Babadook. Which is an accidental queer-coded movie, but kind of works if you really look at it with rainbow glasses.
Exactly.
I'm in a similar boat to you. I love queer representation on film. I love queer-coded things. I love watching things. And I think horror is such a great vehicle for that, especially in like earlier days of cinema and horror, sort of working that in when you couldn't say it out loud. When you couldn't just put it out there. And in this movie specifically, I really love the representation in a way that doesn't feel smutty, even if it's graphic. Because I think queer characters as villains is an easy thing. But this one is, there's a lot of sex, but it doesn't feel sleazy, even though it is sort of like...
It's such a celebration. Yeah.
Yeah. I also think it's very cool that there's sort of like this cool kind of like butchy femme lesbian as the lead in a movie about gay male porn. I like her as the director. I think that's very cool. And Vanessa Paradis is like fantastic in it. She's like so brutal and harsh. She's a character like I like her because she's cool, but also she's a bad person. So I'm like a little divided on actually
she's a mess.
Yeah, she's a mess. Like she's, but she's also trying, right? As a person. I mean, she's heartbroken, she's an alcoholic, she has a lot of issues, but she's also like puts in the work to try to find the killer. When the movie kind of turns to the whodunit like early on, and you're trying to put the clues together, and then she sets up the sort of the scene at the end when she figures out who it is. And the whodunit part is, I think, probably the least interesting part of the movie. There was a second where it got me early on where I was like, oh, maybe it's one of the actors, maybe it's her.
Yeah.
But that definitely is I think the narrative part of the movie is the least interesting part of the movie.
That may be one big reason why I've gravitated towards Knife Plus Heart since it came out. Is, well, number one, it is gay AF. Like, there's no queer coding here. It is, you are
Right.
from the beginning. You're like, hello, meet all the gay people you're about to spend the next 2 hours with, and figure this out. To that context too, being a 100% queer film, like, that's the other little level of like queer horrors. There's queer horror that's queer coded, and then there's queer horror that is just gay, which there is actually not a ton of explicitly gay horror out there. So whenever it does pop up, I always like to take note and really hope that it is serving a purpose more than just being a thirst trap for gay horror fans, which can sometimes be the problem in gay horror. Well, and with that, I'm talking about like David Decato's movies, which, if you've ever seen any of those, like, they're always about like college boys, like either starting a coven or some weird like witch thing or something, but it's really a big excuse for the college boys to like get down to their underwear and eventually like make out with each other and whatever, and then you're like, wait, but wasn't there something going on with like a sacrifice, or like isn't the hell mouth about to open up? Wait, what's going on?
I will say that, although not necessarily maybe intended as a thirst trap, I will say every person in this movie is very attractive.
Yeah, I mean,
very true.
You can't take a trip to the French, Spanish countrysides and not find attractive people.
What if we did the entire Who's on First bit and then asked people to leave us Apple Podcast reviews?
Who's on first?
Yes, and what's on second, and I don't know, is on third.
No. We are not doing this.
Right. No, we're not doing this is the shortstop.
Stop.
No, I don't think he's on the team.
No, I mean, we're not going to do the whole Abbott and Costello bit. We're just going to nicely ask people to leave us a review on Apple Podcast if they enjoy Bunk 237, horror movie podcast. And that's that.
That's the coach.
This has been Robin and Tuyet do Who's on First. Stick around for more Bunk 237.
Well, that's what I thought was so successful about this movie is like it's about gay porn. It's about like sort of this like subculture in 70s Paris. It's kind of gritty and dirty. There are a lot of like weird kind of dream sequences. It's very ethereal. It's very like kind of stagey at points. And then it's also super goofy and schlocky and campy, and it does both. Like it just perfectly melds them somehow.
The movie within a movie is, I love that. It's probably one of my favorite things in any kind of cinema, fake television shows, fake movies. It's one of my favorite things of all time, probably.
Yeah. I actually have a badge that for the movie within a movie, and it's called the Fool Me Once badge, because several times Gonzalez got me with I'm starting a scene and you don't know what's going on, who is it, what's happening, and then it's just a scene in the movie that they're shooting.
That's every time it happened, it was very fun. Especially, I mean, probably one of the funnest scenes is the police interrogation. Is the fake the fake police interrogation with the foot fetish and the guy that's like humping the typewriter and the mustachioed policeman. Oh, it was so comical and just right in the middle of it, and just coming right after what seems, I'm like, is that one got me for sure, where I was like, wait, is this happening or is this in the movie? I don't know, but I love it. But once they start just pushing, they walk up to that edge and then they just glide on right through, and it's so good. It's just
like joy. It's like joyous almost. It's hard because, you know, they're dealing with murder and like actually serious, you know, there are some like really tough themes in this, and the, you know, homophobia and self-loathing and that kind of, you know, all the violence. And then, you know, and then it's just like, this is the world they live in.
This is the world queer people live in, for the most part. It's like, that's one of the things too. It's like, queer life can be a horror movie a lot of times. And, you know, it's really interesting in a non-queer coded sense with a film like this. To have a queer villain is interesting because it is definitely like a taking back of, like, you know, the F word or, you know, anything like that, where I've often called it like equal opportunity murder, where it's like, it's not that the killer's queer, it's that or that the people who are being killed are queer, it's that we as queer people want to be the ones making the choice of who's queer in those connections. Where it's like when straight people, Brian De Palma, have, you know, thrown queer people as the killers very often. It's for that old, isn't this peculiar?
Right.
Sense of reveals of killers. And in this instance, you know, the reveal of who the killer is, like, it's both like devastating because we understand that it's a person who was freaking burned alive by his father after his father cut off his penis because he caught him with a friend in a barn. And that, you know, he did not deal well with surviving that incident. And that internalized into essentially like homophobia for the situation. But when it's revealed that he's the killer in front of the viewers at this porno theater, their reaction, knowing that he's been killing gay people, is to kill him. And it's both like a devastating, but then also like a just kind of like punishment where you're like, well, you shouldn't have killed people. Like there comes a moment in those situations, like I do have a weird moment in the back of my head where I'm like, yo, can we talk this out? Like, don't kill him. Like, let's talk this out a second.
He's
yeah.
just
And then
hurting.
but then it's like, oh yeah, he did just like kill like 5 people.
Yeah, that's true. I have that conversation with myself a lot when watching horror movies. When I kind of sympathize with the villain, I'm always like, but okay, but that person's bad. But I think you make a good point, Keith, because I think, you know, historically, in cinema, gay villains are villains because they're gay, because it's an evil thing to be gay in these movies. But what I like about this is that in this movie, the gay villain is gay, but he's a villain not because he's gay, but because he was in love. And I thought about that a lot, because the other thing I thought about in this movie was how, especially in horror movies, and we know this, sex and death are equated in horror movies all the time. Sex equals death. It's usually teenagers having sex. Having sex in a movie, in a horror movie, you're gonna die. And every person that had sex in this movie died. But I think the difference in this movie, and I think, again, coming back to the point where, although this movie is graphic, it's not smutty, it's not sleazy, is that it equates sex with death, but it also equates love with death. And I think that in a lot of movies, gay villains don't get that kind of backstory. The backstory that they get is that they're gay.
Well, and we have that really interesting juxtaposition of Anne and her relationship with her ex-girlfriend that comes to a very, you know, terrible head, where she in turn becomes a monster, like just as bad as Guy is. You know, she essentially sexually assaults her ex-girlfriend. And there's like no coming back from that. But it's akin to Guy's first decision to murder someone. It was like you know, the same kind of thing. But we are there with Anne, and, you know, she did not murder anybody, but she also feels like she's been murdered herself. Like, she's such a
I have
Dramatic.
a dead body. I mean, you know, she literally scratches "You've killed me" into the film that she knows that her girlfriend's going to see while she's editing the movie.
Yeah, I have a badge that's related to that line, but it's actually a different line, and I guess this comes up a lot in the movie. But the badge is, "Oh, you just said what the movie is about," badge, to the character of Nons, who said, quote, "The more you kill me, the more I love you."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's what the movie is about. It's a lot of like that. And again, and it goes back and forth on that the whole time.
Over and over. The whole cabaret scene, too, with the performance of the two women, and one of them is dressed as a bear or
the bear's
bear.
eating her love.
Yes.
Yeah. And the dramatic cabaret with all that blood and guts, also very fun cabaret show.
Very fun cabaret show.
Love to see that in person.
She says, "The more I kill you, the more I love you.
Yeah.
The more you kill me, the more you love me."
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's all there the whole time.
There it is. That's what the movie's about.
Yeah. I have a question, and it's surrounding Anne's connection to Guy, because he murders the people in the movie that basically told the story of his life, right? That she made. And
years before had made.
Years before.
Yeah.
The oldie moldy.
Right.
As she called it.
Right. And ostensibly, like when we see those dream sequences in like the negatives, that it's always happening when she's sleeping. So it seems like she's dreaming of his story. What is that connection there? You know, and then she goes to the cemetery, and she clearly is drawn to this grave. Is it just like an elemental, like we've been through sort of this, you know, we've been destroyed by love kind of thing?
I mean, those scenes are obviously dreams that she's haunted by. So
right,
yeah, and that's I think one of the nice things within the movie, and you know, I love when a movie doesn't spell everything out, where there is kind of a supernatural magic that will flow through something where we don't really have to know. It's like meeting the son of that bird expert who has the weird bird hand.
Yeah.
Like, what? Okay.
I have a badge that's just the birds badge.
Yeah.
There are a lot of birds.
Put a bird on it.
The ancient blind bird.
That was a weird
Bird.
turn. I feel like I was watching the movie. I feel like I blinked for a second, and then it got extra supernatural. And I was just like, wait, is there a monster? What happened? I had to go back after the movie again and be like, what happened? My question was, what happened in this movie?
Yeah, I mean, because there's a lot of serendipity, I suppose, is what it is, where it's like, you know, how did Guy come to find, you know, this porn production house, and, you know, basically like haunt it, waiting for these various actors to make themselves vulnerable. And then, you know, especially it comes to when they do they go on the picnic in the countryside.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, you are in the country, and
Yeah.
and Guy has decided to show up in broad daylight, no less.
Yeah.
After one of, I think her name was Missia, gets lost in the woods inexplicably because it's too windy.
Yeah.
That happens to me all the time on picnics with my friends. Keep an eye on me. I'm going to get lost if it gets a little windy.
Yeah. Have a buddy in case
there's a swift gust.
Yes. Oh, but it seemed like serendipitous that the killer was like, oh, and then yes, I got you, the one that I was waiting for. That was the actor who had left, who hadn't done her porn in years, and just through, you know, a favor, I suppose, had come to help them shoot the final scene of Homicidal. Such a great
pun
title.
of the century.
Yeah.
incredible pun. When Anne came back and was like, I have a new title, because it was originally titled Anal Fury 5.
Yes.
Which also is such an incredible joke about porno movies. But this is probably maybe an unintentional or intentional thing in the movie, but it is interesting how everything kind of happens coincidentally, because even Guy finding the original movie that just happened to tell his life story, I mean, is that coincidence? Is that fate? Is her connection just that she, happened to make a story that was similar to someone else's life story, which happens. That's that is a real thing that happens in storytelling, is that you are going to accidentally tell someone's story. There's 7 billion people on Earth,
Right. I think the answer probably is that the movie is more of a metaphor or a poem than a logistical sequence of events.
Yes.
Especially by the time we get to the end of the movie, where like the credit sequence essentially.
I love the credit sequence.
Where I think you were, your badge came from, where you're like, fool me once, but then you're like, oh no, wait, this isn't a movie.
Right. Yes. Totally.
This is probably a dream. Or is Anne dead now? Is this the future? Is this like her meeting up with Lois in heaven? What's going on?
Right.
Is there going to be another credit sequence to this movie?
Right.
No, there is not.
I love the credit sequence. There's also something fun about a credit sequence that kind of just tells the story again, or like, because there was the narration at the end, or the voiceover at the end, where she reminds you who he is and what happened, and but tells the fairy tale version of his story, and about how he was rescued by these birds and so on, which is a weird take on it. I'm not mad at it, but it was
it's a very
odd.
Selena Kyle Catwoman origin story.
Oh, exactly.
I love it. Going back to the birds, I found the birds so interesting because at first, to me, before we know what's going on with the murderer, the bird seems to show up right before, a kill, and it's very ominous. And then we get the explanation of the bird, and it's like this ancient protector of people when they die. It's like a protective, like comforting kind of thing. And that was just very, like the kind of like switch up of the function of the bird was very interesting.
And the bird is blind too. So that's
Yeah.
the other thing. Is it has no idea what it's seen, what it's, Guy, who it's been like, hey, we nursed you back to health. We're just coming to the city with you, right? You're just going to like go on some adventures, right? And then it's like, oh, you're just meeting people, right? And then it's like, hey, I didn't hear that person just went home. Are they okay? Do they like?
Wait, is the bird a representation of love? Like, it's blind.
Love is blind.
It might be evil, but it's also good. It's protective, but it also creates
ominous,
chaos.
but also,
It's ominous.
yeah, but also fuzzy. Like, it was a pretty cute bird.
Just like love.
I do really love this killer as a queer note of so many things, like their leather fashion, the like leather mask, like out in the open too. Like it is interesting how, I don't know how many of y'all have dug deep into a queer bar, like the Eagle and so forth, where things get a little rougher. But the idea of like a leather face mask is such a just like, hey, that dude just likes wearing a leather face mask. There's no questioning it.
Right.
And this notion that he's just enjoying himself at a club, hiding the like severely burned face underneath, which is fine, not his fault. Just wants to be loved too. Then the phallus with the knife in it.
I have a badge.
You do?
It is the knife to meet you badge to that killer cock. A dildo switchblade?
I have the dildo switchblade badge. This is, I think, the only movie that I've seen that has a dildo switchblade.
Weren't there
in
like
it.
Razor Cox and Mandy?
Oh no, there is that dude. The dude
There's
who's
a
like
dude, right?
snorts the
Yes.
mountain of cocaine.
Right.
Who has like, yeah, he's got some shit on
Yeah.
his dick that.
I think it's just a knife that comes out of his crotch.
Right, yeah, it's different. It's not a dildo switchblade specifically. Yeah,
well,
this
we got to
is-
go back to the granddaddy of the dildo switchblade, which is David Fincher's Seven.
Ah, yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness. I
Yeah,
forgot about
yeah.
that.
And that
A
was
more
a family
subtle,
movie.
a more subtle. Yeah, at the time, the horror was in only seeing what the implement was and not it in action. We had to understand. Oh,
Yeah.
Right,
dear
right,
Lord.
right.
Oh yeah,
Right,
I
right,
gasped. The little high school me gasped
Yeah,
when I saw that.
a little gay gasp.
Yeah.
I like to underline Vanessa Paradis in this movie because she's always been an actress that I've loved for years, and it's for many reasons, but one of them is her ability to like just totally fall into a movie like this, and just know every like inch of her character. Like, she's never overacting; she just is overcome. She's just
Yeah.
and Vanessa Paradis with the gap in her teeth that I want to drive a van through just so I can like hear the wind that rolls by as I do that.
She's so beautiful also. Like just like every time I see a photo of her, like and that's like throughout the course of my lifetime, like she is just so beautiful.
And her voice, too.
Oh, excuse me. Hello. Hi. Hi.
I love the idea of her character too as just this this lesbian who's decided to apparently throw all of her money, wherever she's gotten all this money, into just making porno, and obviously has hit like a low point where she's just like, whatever, we're just shooting porn. She's not even barely showing up to direct.
Right.
She's gotten
Right.
drunk, and her cameraman and Archibald, her like
Oh,
her
I have
great
to shout out Archibald.
yes,
Because that actor, Nicolau Maury, I'm butchering the pronunciation, but he plays Hervé in Call My Agent. That you guys, if you have not watched, this is like my short plug for Call My Agent. What a good show. And he's wonderful in that show. A very different character. And I guess that's acting. He's just a good actor. But I just love him so much.
yeah, he's really great. But she just shows up and is just like, well, I guess we're making another movie,
Right.
until a murder happens, and then she's like,
Inspiration.
inspiration.
Like the way that ignites her like passion for it, and she writes this incredible story. I wanted to give her the Women in Film badge, you know, for her work in the adult film industry, but also for her vision in what I would call narrative art films.
I found it very interesting that like the people around her seemed to know that she was not like a great person, you know, like I guess I don't know if it was I guess Lois called her a monster and Archibald agreed or something, and like they just kind of know, but they stick with her and they trust her on like a deeper level, you know. There's something else there where they know that like she's a mess, but she's gonna, you know, love them and protect them, and you know, no matter what.
I think this speaks to like community, right? I think this also speaks to like being in the queer community and
Chosen
sort of-
family.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I think that even the sort of bad apples, so to speak, in your chosen family, that's still, those are your people. And even like her ex-girlfriend, who thinks she's a monster, is still working on the film and is still part of the troupe and still part of the community.
And comes to save her at the end.
Yeah.
You know, attempts to when she finds out what's going on.
I really do like the line for the conclusion of the movie of Homicidal, where they reveal that it's the box office girl from the porno theater. And they say, mother by day, murderer by night, a sickness on the rise. And I was just like, I love the notion of like mothers becoming murderers like as a like as a problem, like that was like this is the 10th one this week.
Epidemic. Yeah.
I would love to actually watch Homicidal. I wish that there was a cut of just Homicidal, like in an era of DVD extras. I want that to be an extra.
It's true. There is a cut on the Blu-ray of De Sperme d'Etat Fraîche, which they filmed as a whole like little short essentially, but no homicidal, unfortunately.
That's too bad. I have a question for both of you guys. Because I watching this, and I made this joke earlier, but it's a real sexy film. But I was thinking about how, like, the way that I'm provoked by sex on screen. I have no problem seeing sex on screen. I have no problem seeing death on screen. However, maybe because of my Catholic upbringing, when I do see sex, and this is sometimes even when I just see people kissing on screen, like, I'm a little, I get a little, like, shy in my heart, like a little embarrassed, like a little blush.
A little shy in your heart?
I do. I can't. And it's like, it's never anything outwardly, but I can feel it in my soul where I kind of want to look. I'm like, let me turn around. I'll give you guys some privacy. And it's sex, it's intimacy, and maybe that says something more about me than about movies. But like, I was thinking about the contrast of how, like, the way that I reacted, like, death scenes versus the way that I reacted, like, sex scenes. Like, I'm much more open. I don't have any kind of weird shyness watching death scenes, but watching, like, people have sex, it makes me a little nervous. And I'm like, why does it do that to me? Is that because we come from Puritans? Like, what is that?
Yes.
Yes. No, you're right. I mean, do you guys have that reaction, or like when you guys see sex on screen? Does it make you nervous? Does it make you feel anything?
Well, it's funny because I just think you need to watch more gay porno or more porno in general. But watching this film, I appreciate it 100% every aspect of, like, the porn that it's depicting. But there's a part of me that's just like, they could have gone. It's a wishful thinking that they could have gone the extra step and just filmed fucking.
Yeah. I had that same sort of thing at the end of the movie, whereas, like, Tuyet, I am with you. Like, there's a tiny part of me that is like, oh, should I be watching this? But then I got to the end of this movie and I was like, wait a second. Like, they cut all the scenes before the actual sex starts, or before anyone gets naked. Like, you don't see penis. Like, you don't, like, there was like a coyness to the way that they shot this movie that I was like, hold on a second.
Yeah,
it wasn't as weird. Like, it wasn't as much as I thought it was, or I thought it was going to be.
It's like you look at a movie like Short Bus, which is not a horror film nor a porno, but there's extended scenes of real people having sex and doing wild things. And you're just like, at some point, and maybe this is just my old hat years of watching porno, is just that there's probably a desensitization to it, at least on my end, where it's more like, oh, okay, well, we know what they're getting at, and we don't have to necessarily, like, follow on those details a little bit, especially because I suppose that's the comedy side of it, is the sort of just like the weirdness of shooting porn in general, like how none of their shooting porn is sexy.
Right,
like,
right.
None of it is sexy.
Right. We haven't talked about Bouche d'Or, the fluffer guy.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Golden Mouth. I loved
Mouth
him.
of Gold.
I thought he was great. I loved the way he was introduced also, where his name was called out first and then he appeared. And I was like, that's a great name for a fluffer. That's a perfect name for a fluffer. I love that. I love that. And I also love the little joke that, like, when one of the characters was like, how much are you getting paid? And he was like, oh, I live with my mom. I don't need money. And I was like, oh, you just love your job. I appreciate that.
For the love of the job.
I appreciate someone that, is dedicated to their craft. Love it. Also, I want to be clear. I'm not a prude. Like, I've seen a lot of sex in cinema and non-cinema. But I think it's just my Catholic heart. I'm like.
Well, did your shy heart have a little squeal with the? I'll give it a badge. I'll pull out a badge of the fire in the hull badge for the dual explosive cum shot in the movie between the detective and the I guess the femme fatale in two different locations.
I thought that was
funny.
so rad.
And they showed it
I
multiple
love it.
times.
Yeah.
Got me every time.
Yeah. I love a scene. I love scenes that are cut like that are like two things that are happening at the same time. Fantastic. Loved it. I don't say I don't like it. I like it. Guys, I love it. Guys, please. I'm not weird, right?
No, you're not weird.
Well, no,
went to
you are
Sunday school for a
perfectly
long
fine
time.
fine in all your angelic ways.
Perfectly normally repressed.
The
rest of us.
the stork brings babies, and those people are just wrestling.
Keith, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so glad that you brought this movie to us.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad you guys wanted to watch and talk about this movie, because it is, it's such a well-made horror film.
Yeah.
It hits all the beats that we want to with a slasher of sorts, but it really is that added touch of the queer identity. And I do think, is it a little arty? Of course, but it never takes itself so seriously. I mean, it is a French film after all, so we can't just have a straight up. I mean, let's think of all the French horror films that have made an impact. From High Tension to Martyrs to Inside. They all have their moments where they get a little heady, where they're like, "Ooh, what is this? Sacre bleu! What is this French?" This French twist that we have going on. And I should give a shout out to the film was the first major distribution release of a great little queer company called Altered Innocence. And they put out specifically just all queer content. And they've been restoring a lot of great older queer films, including some great, very heady queer pornos that in fact inspired the films within Knife and Heart, including one called Equation of an Unknown, which is really fantastic. They have a side label called Anus Films instead of Janus Films for their porn restorations. And they have a couple from this great director, Halstead, that are making their rounds in theaters and festivals this fall. But check out Altered Innocence online. They've also begun distributing their films through Vinegar Syndrome, our old friends at Vinegar Syndrome. So you always get really good quality art and copies and all sorts of stuff from them. But yes, I fell in with them with Knife Plus Heart, and they've just always dazzled me with their choice of films that they put in their roster. So
Where can we find you online? What are you working on?
If you ever want to follow me on like the Instagrams and stuff, I'm at Constant Watcher is my handle across many things. I am currently trying to get together our programming at the Sea Film Center. We've been closed obviously since the pandemic, but we'll be returning to in-person right around the start of the 44th Denver Film Festival, coming up November 3rd to the 14th here in Denver, Colorado. And we'll be open right after that for certain. And be back to programming screens for Denverites or various people who travel abroad and land in Denver. And as you mentioned before, still working on I guess we're going on 13 years of production of my documentary, my dragumentary, The Heels Have Eyes. So it's getting closer, I swear, I promise.
Awesome.
Keith,
That's
you're
really
always
cool.
such a wonderful trove of information and trivia and like such great film recommendations We love having you on. Thank you so
Well,
much.
thanks for having me back. It's
Yeah.
a pleasure. Hopefully I can make it to complete out a trilogy.
Oh, please. Please. I think you have to come back every
For
season.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come back all the time because we know nothing. So
Yeah.
every time.
It's like a class, but like
Yeah.
a really cool one.
Yeah. I always know so much more afterwards. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for making us look good. Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome.
I don't know if he. I don't know about that. I thought it was a steep task.
Thanks for tolerating us, Keith.
Bunk 237, a horror movie podcast, stars Tuyet Wen and Robin Zlotnick as the final girls of Bunk 237, and introducing Alex Skoke as camp director Susan Check. The show is produced by me, Shane Segretti. Our theme song is written and performed by Dan Zlotnick, and our outro music is written and performed by Axe Slasher. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and it may be featured on an upcoming episode. Have a badge of your own for this movie? Follow us on Instagram at Bunk237Pod and Twitter at Bunk237, and let us know. If you haven't already, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded.